Oh, King, you're so handsome. Oh, Queen, you're so beautiful. Hey, hi. So I was playing chess. Chess, the game of champions and war strategy. I mean, what a great game. You got this whole war simulation right here, right? You got the pawns, the foot soldiers, march, 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 march. You got the rook, the little castle. Zing, 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 zing. You've got the mighty queen who can do anything. You got the knight. Yeah. And you got the bishop, the bishop, the Catholic bishop, the dude with the pointy hat, the dude who spends his day saying, Jesus would say, turn the other cheek, love thy neighbor. What is he doing in a war game? Stay tuned to find out. So we've been waiting a long time for this, and now it's finally going to happen. We've been watching the Europeans knee deep in cow poop for a long time. During the Middle Ages, we said they were backwards and they didn't have a lot of trade. They didn't have a lot of inventions. They were all a bunch of farmers. Nothing wrong with farmers. It's just, that's not where invention and progress usually happens. If we look at a map of Europe, it's not one big country, we said. It was broken up into a bunch of pieces. But it's starting to come together, and that's the key. We're starting to see the evolution of the Europe that we see today. Now, granted, the United Kingdom doesn't exist yet. We still have England down here and Scotland up there and parts of Ireland over here that have to be dealt with. And France hasn't gotten its borders figured out yet. We haven't quite worked out the Liechtenstein and Luxembourg and all that stuff going on there. Germany doesn't exist yet, but a prototype of Germany does, the Holy Roman Empire. Italy, not a thing yet. It's getting there, but we still have the Kingdom of Sicily and the lands that the Pope controls directly, and this stuff is still part of Germany, yet not. There's no Austria, but we're working on it. We're working on it, slowly watching Europe evolve here. And so one of the evolutions we're seeing is in the realm of political centralization. I know that term doesn't sound interesting, but all we're talking about here is for a country like France to exist, or for England or for Germany to exist, there has to be a stronger central government. Like in the United States, we have a strong central government where you have the president and Congress and the court system and all that stuff. Yes, there are states, I get it, but at the center there is one direct unifying power. In the case of Europe, they've been having a heck of a time, right? In the Middle Ages, with all those knights and lords squabbling and all trying to control their own little pieces of the pie, we said kings were usually pretty weak and they weren't able to really exert their power. But it's starting to change now, for better or for worse. You can make your arguments either way. But by the time we get to, say, the year 1000, 1200, 1300 in there, it depends on the country, but kings are starting to get it. One way they do it is by creating direct taxation. Now, in the old days, remember, they would count on the knights to collect money, collect food, whatever, taxes from their people, and then forward some of that to the king. But the kings are starting to find a workaround. They are directly taxing the people, going around the nobility, not giving the nobility a chance to put their little hand in the cookie jar and pull some money out. So we're starting to see in this struggle between the king, say, on one side, and the nobility on the others, the knights, that's what these are here, right? We're starting to see, a bit of a shift in power. Historically in Europe, sometimes all the power goes towards the nobility, and the kings are quite weak. But now we're starting to see a shift in this seesaw where the kings are getting a little bit more powerful. And what really comes in handy, by the way, is the kings are now some of the richest people in Europe. These kings can take that money from direct taxation and they can buy armies with guns. That's the thing, man. Guns are coming out. Guns are expensive, though. And your average knight can't put together an army himself of gunpowder warriors. But slowly, in certain European countries, kings are able to put together a small army of guys who are full-time, trained gunpowder units. And that's going to make a difference. It's going to help them win this balance of power. Now, we still got the Pope out there, right? Especially here in Western Europe, you've got a bunch of Catholic power still going on. You got the Pope, who still has a lot of influence, still has a lot of control. And what we're seeing here is the Pope kind of weighs in. He's watching all of this. And sometimes when the nobles get pretty heavy on the power spectrum, he might step in because he wants strong kings to be on his side. Then again, if the kings get too strong, they might stop listening to the Pope. So when that happens, the Pope sometimes puts weight back on the nobility side and limits the power of kings. So it's kind of like a referee, if you will, going on at this point. The Catholic Church, the Pope, trying to balance that power between nobility and king into a balance of power that lets him, frankly, call a lot of the shots still. So we still got that going on in the way of kings truly becoming super powerful, but still, kings are on their way. Back to this chess analogy. If you never thought about chess, I mean, I don't know how many of you have played chess, but on a chessboard, it was a game created, it was a war game, how to teach young noble children how to strategize in warfare. What's interesting is it goes all the way back to maybe India, Persia, no one's quite sure. Here's an old Persian chess set from a long time before this game ever got to Europe. You've got your pawns. These represent, your peasants, right? The people that just like, come on, guys, we got to go fight. And you hand them some sticks, some spears, whatever, and they're your front lines. And you got so many of them that you're more than willing to sacrifice these guys if it means doing something better. So there's your foot soldiers you don't really care about. In chess, you've got, say, your better pieces in the back row, your stronger pieces. Now, in the Persian days, in the Indian days, you had war elephants, you had chariots, and of course, your dudes on horseback, your cavalry, etc. Well, funny. Eventually, the game of chess gets to Europe. And Europe's going to love the game, and they're going to adopt it for themselves. They're going to keep some of the pieces, like, for instance, the king has always been like the most important piece on any chessboard, Persian or whatever. But they're going to do some changes. This one fascinates me. For instance, take, for instance, the rook in chess. You look at it, you're like, dude, that's a castle. Correct. It is a tower from a castle. Interestingly enough, when it was in Persia, it was the armored chariot, which in Persian is Rukh. I'm not really sure if that's the right pronunciation. But when it gets to Europe, they don't use armored chariots in the Middle Ages, but they do have a lot of castles. So they keep the name, change the piece. The cavalry becomes the knight. Okay, pretty much the same thing. But here's the one I want to talk about. Look at the bishop. Wait, what? Hold on. You got the foot soldier, the castle, the knight, the king and queen, the church official with the pointy hat? What's up with that's a war game? Yeah, but in Europe, it makes perfect sense because in Europe, the church is a super powerful piece. I always wondered as a kid why the bishop looks like a big tall pawn with a slice taken out. I couldn't figure out if that was a smile or what that was. And now in my older, wiser days, I realize it's a take on the bishop's hat. A stylish hat at that. Point is, the game of chess really shows this well. It shows just how powerful the Pope and the Catholic Church really was still in European society. Well, let's talk about economic growth. So politically, the kings are starting to get more important and more powerful and able to put together private armies. What about economically? Well, Europe still is a land primarily of farmers. But that's going to start to change a little bit. Now, if you look at Europe, even going into the 1700s, which is well into the course, there still are basically the three social classes, or as they call them in France, the three estates. Those who pray, those who fight, those who work. Meaning, those who fight are the knights, the nobility, right? They're the ones at the very top, the rich people who own all the land and can afford the horses and the suits of armor. Those who pray, this is my best Porky Pig. I don't know if you're familiar. Nice guy. This is the Catholic Church, right? The bishops, the priests, anybody in the church clergy and the church hierarchy there would fit here. So at the very top, you've got the nobility, then you've got the church, and then there is those who work. In other words, everybody else. Estimates are about 90% of the population of Europe are poor, illiterate peasants who spend their days, of course, knee deep in poop, just trying to eke out an existence. Now, this should not surprise you, right? This is what Europe's got going on social class wise. Notice what's missing. What's missing is a middle class. Now, here's the thing. During the Middle Ages, there really is not much of a middle class. There's a few, yeah. You got your few blacksmiths and so forth, your few millers, all the cool names, right? Coopers who make barrels and millers who mill things, and all the different smiths, the silversmiths who work with silver, the blacksmiths who work with iron. Yeah, but now something new is happening. We're starting to see a larger middle class spring up. Not in every country, not in every place, but we're starting to get a middle class merchants. And that's going to make all the difference. Because where do merchants live? They live in cities. Now, look, I don't want to live in a major city in the United States. That's just not who I am. I don't like the crowds. I don't like the dirtiness, the chaos. I like having a yard. I like having quiet. I want to get on a road and I have 5,000 people in front of me. I get it. But cities are darn important to world history, to American history. Cities are where things happen. Nothing wrong with farmers, but farmers are very conservative. Nothing wrong with being conservative. But if everyone in society is conservative, we never change. How do we adapt to new things that spring up? We can't. We don't. Cities, on the other hand, are full of people who have to deal with change. They might not even want to, but they have no choice. You can't just have a city and not have rules and not have new inventions to deal with the congestion and to deal with crime as it springs up and to deal with all the things that cities bring to it. And so cities are, like it or not, important. Now, Europe does not have a lot of cities in the early Middle Ages, but we're starting to see cities get bigger and bigger and bigger. So pretend we've got a county. A county would be a district ruled over by, you guessed it, a count. Believe it or not, that's where the term comes from. So we've got a count who is some, knight, right? Some lord who, like forever, has had all this rural manor estate to himself. And it just so happens that there was, a few towns within his manor, and one of them has grown to pretty sizable proportions. This city is like, wait a minute, dude. Count, why are you telling me what to do? I have many reasons to tell you what to do. One, I am the count. Two, I always have. Three, the king allows me. And the city says, but dude, we have more people living in our city than you have in your entire manor. We generate more wealth here than the whole rest of the place. And the count's like, well, that's true. But you cannot go. See, the beauty is, for the city to thrive, it needs to trade. And so the roads, remember, roads don't just spring up, right? Roads are generally built or maintained by someone, especially if there's, say, a bridge over a river. There's the river. The count might build a bridge, but like, you use my bridge. I shall charge you tolls. Man, the cities get grumpy about that kind of thing. And so cities are starting to negotiate their independence. Don't write this down or anything, but I just want to show you. This is a charter from the city of Saint Omer in France. What it's showing is that first agreement where the count says, you know what, fine, you can be independent, do your own thing. Here's the agreement. The count still promises to use his military to protect the city if there are outside invaders, so the city doesn't have to have its own army. But the count also agrees no more tolls on the roads leading into or out of the city. Like we said with that bridge, right? The count also promises he will not tax the individual people. That's what a per capita tax is. No longer must they pay taxes to a count. What does the count get? He gets a flat rate, a big paycheck once a year that the city pays for their independence. Now, why am I showing this to you? Because it's showing cities beginning to emerge in Europe and to do their own thing. And some cities are doing amazingly well. Take, for instance, the Italian cities. They're the big stars for the rest of this show. If you look at a map of Europe, you'll notice that Italy doesn't really exist. In fact, Italy's not going to be a country until the US Civil War, believe it or not. It's a bunch of individual things. The Pope owns a little bit of land here and whatever. But what's interesting about Italy is a lot of these cities are independent. Take, for instance, Venice or Naples or Genoa or whatever. These are independent cities that no one can tell them what to do. Since they're cities, they rely upon trade and not farming. And they're also in a good spot right here in the Mediterranean Sea, which is so close to the Islamic world. And like we said, the Islamic world is where all the trade is coming from. So Venice, for instance, that awesome city. You really should go. I've been there once. It's kind of like Disney because I think there's like 4 Italians that actually live there. Everybody else is a tourist. Doesn't matter. Beautiful, unbelievable city in the middle of the ocean. Okay, not in the middle, but right on the edge. But you get the idea. Anyway, it's cities like that they're going to make the Renaissance, or as the French say, Renaissance, possible. What is this Renaissance thing all about? It's about Europe finally getting in the game. And it's not going to happen in England. Again, cows don't invent things. Farmers tend to not invent things other than farm implements. But cities invent things. All this trade that the Italians are doing with the Islamic world is bringing in a lot of cash. And all this cash has got to be used for something. So more and more rich middle-class merchants start buying stuff that they think is pretty. Art, building cool-looking buildings, etc. The Middle Ages, again, were kind of a dark period for Europe. So they go back to the earlier times, the classical times, as we call them. And they look what the Greeks were up to, and the Romans, like, wow, we can do that again. We've got the money now. And so you see this most famous of Renaissance pieces of architecture here in Florence, this beautiful, beautiful building. The dome is key. Go back to the Roman days. The Romans kind of invented the dome. It allows you to have a big, wide open spot. Beautiful. When it comes to art, look, this is old art. This is what the Byzantines or the medieval Europeans were doing. Look at Jesus. People don't bend that way. It looks like Jesus is wearing pantyhose that's too big. Look at it. His knees are all wrinkly. Now, Jesus is good at many things, so I'm told. But he can't float. He's hovering in space. Why is he hovering? Well, he's not really. I guess Mary's leg is there and he's kind of propped up, and maybe rat finger guy is trying to hold his legs. I don't know. And come on, Jesus again, pretty impressive man, but how many sit-ups did he do? Anyway, I digress. Look, this is not bad art. I couldn't do it, sadly. But I know a lot of Redland kids that could draw better than this. It's not really 3D. It's not quite right. This is what art was in the Middle Ages for Europe. Here's another example. This is, and it's always religious themes, right? Because of the Catholic Church influence. This is Mother Mary and baby Jesus. What? I'll give the artist a little bit of credit. He got the 3D part down all right. Like, kind of looks like a 3D throne, sort of. It's not quite right, but not bad, not bad. But when it comes to baby Jesus, I do not know how to draw babies, but I do know how to draw little men. Oh, that cracks me up. And Mary, my gosh, she's an Amazonian woman. She's a gigantor compared to all the little people. But I get it. It's trying to make a statement, whatever. This is what art used to be. But now when we get to the Renaissance, look what art can be again. Because all these cities are bigger. They have more people to choose from, more artists competing. It's a great painting. I like it. You got definite 3D stuff that looks real going on in this building. You got perspective in the background. Everyone's the right size, although I would argue, no offense, but dude, does everybody have to be exactly the same height? But hey, whatever. Who am I to argue? I wasn't there. Now, I don't know what the title of this painting is. I know what it should be. It should be called, Dude, Where's My Pants? Because I'm pretty sure this guy lost his pants and he's asking Jesus, and Jesus is like, dude, it's over there. There's your pants. And this guy here is like, yeah, dude, you don't have pants either. I'm not really sure that that's at all the theme of this, but I like to pretend. You got, of course, the Sistine Chapel with Michelangelo. By the way, fun fact, Michelangelo used my body as his inspiration for Adam touching the finger of God. And of course, Leonardo. So we've got Michelangelo, Donatello, Leonardo, all the turtles here working darn hard to make good art. That's what we're talking about, the Renaissance. You don't get this on a farm, right? Not because farmers are dumb or don't know how to draw, right? It's because that's not what they do. But in cities, you get technology, new inventions, new art forms. I mean, look at this. The dude even captured the fact that this tablecloth was folded. You've got good perspective, 3D stuff going on. That requires cities. I mean, what's the beautiful thing about the Mona Lisa? It's her face. Not that it's a beautiful face per se, but it's that she has an expression we can't quite figure out. Some dude took paint on canvas or whatever he did it on and gave a human being an emotion with paint. How unbelievable is that? People can do it today, but they couldn't really do it in the Middle Ages. Sculpture, same thing. I mean, look, pretty realistic. Again, Michelangelo saw me as quite the inspiration for most of his art. That's going to make this even more embarrassing. But anyway, here's medieval sculpture. It's fine. Not quite right. Not quite as realistic. I don't know about you. I don't bend like that. But hey, whatever. You get the idea. And back to the turtles. Leonardo isn't just an artist. He's a scientist in his own little way, right? He studies the human body and our dimensions. He literally, I think it's like 9, but I forget. He has dead bodies dug out of the cemetery, like freshly buried bodies, and he takes them apart. Now, he's not some wacko serial killer. He's fascinated about what is inside. These are his actual drawings. He's sketching the skeletal system. He's sketching the tendons and the muscles. How do you have doctors in the modern world without this? Why is this so revolutionary? Because the Catholic Church forbid it, as by the way with Islamic officials, because you don't desecrate dead bodies. But Leonardo realized that if you're ever going to understand how to fix it, you got to understand what's going on. There's a curiosity there. Farmers don't have this kind of time. They're too busy trying to feed themselves and pay their rent. They're not digging up dead bodies just to see what's on the inside. And of course, more Leonardo drawings. And of course, these helicopters never really came to fruition, but it's still emblematic of why cities matter. And the point is, Europe's now finally getting cities. What makes it possible? Wealth. Where's the wealth coming from? These Italian cities with merchants who are trading with the Islamic world. Europe's finally starting to get into the game. See ya.